So continuation pa rin tayo ng basic computer operating system. So kung mapapansin natin doon sa LMS natin kasi 2 weeks na siya. So 4 sessions na sa yung mga lecture dito. Which is dito muna tayo sa computer operations. After nun, yung mensuration and calculation, then technical drawing, and then yung CSS. So most probably, so mapapaikli nila yung mga lecture dahil some of these lessons ay na-discuss na natin. So mangyari lang, i-review lang natin siya. Okay? Mag-screen share lang tayo. And technically, yan. So, ano tayo ngayon? Computer operations. So, last meeting na i-preview ko sa inyo yung part 1 and part 2 ng recorded na lecture. So, most doon ay na-discuss na natin. Pero ito, review na lang tayo. Okay? So, basic operation of computer system. Okay? Para mas maiba lang tayo. Okay? So, malalaman natin yung basic computer operating system. So, explain ko lang din sa inyo. So, what is computer operation? Okay? So, syempre, we ever wonder how computer got its power, kung paano ba siya nag-ooperate. Paano siya, pag binuksan ba natin siya, paano siya gumagalaw. Okay? Kumbaga, paano niya i-manage. So, have you ever wanted to know what's happening inside your computer while it's running? Diba? So, ginagawa natin, diba? Gumagamit lang tayo ng computer. But behind those, diba? Ano po ba ginagawa ng computer? Okay. So, what about certain key combinations to make computer different things? So, you may not know this, but computers are composed of thousands of little switches that work together. Kasi alam nyo, every time kasi na gumagamit tayo ng computer, syempre nagko-command tayo sa computer kung ano yung gagawin niya. Okay? So computer are made of different components that all work together to accomplish the task that the computer is instructed to do. Sino ba yung nag-i-instruct? Which is tayo po. Tayo po yung end user. Okay? So yung different components, syempre na-discuss na rin naman natin ng mga nakaraan. Napakarami. Diba? Yung mga parts, ano ba yung mga purposes nila? Okay? So they process information, store data, and provide input in some form or another. This means that each component has specific tasks that it performs in order for the computer to function properly. Okay? So yun yung gagawin natin para mag-workout ang computer. So mag-output siya. Okay? And mag-function siya very well. Computers are built on 3 major components, which is hardware, software, and input-output devices. As we mentioned with the previous lesson, ang computer hardware, usually, ito yung mga peripherals natin na nahahawakan po natin. Okay? So, it will work out through the software. Okay? Through the application. Diba? Yung example ko is the printer. Diba? We have the hardware device. Para mag-workout ang isang printer, kailangan po ng software, which is yung driver niya, yung software yon para ibasahin ng computer na merong in-install na printer kapag may kinuman po si user na mag-print. Okay? So, ipiprint lang po niya yon. Okay? So, magkakaroon na ng printed doon sa ating hardware device, which is yung printer po. Aside doon sa software, of course, yung software na yung mga drivers, yung mga applications po na ginagamit po natin to make it more productive sa paggamit natin ng computer. Of course, input-output devices. So, there are also components that provide input or output for the system, but these are hardware components by definition. Okay? So, dito na tayo. Okay? The way PC function depends on the type of operating system you install on it, whether Windows 10, Mac OS, or Linux. Okay? So, all PCs have their own operating system. Okay. Now, let's simply put to the definition of computer operations again. Okay? Computer operation means whatever instruction you give to the computer system, then the computer system executes your function. Napakasimple lang na instruction. Kung ano ang gagawin mo, yun ang i-execute ng computer. Okay, pag may tinip ako, lalabas sa screen. Pag may pinip ako, magpiprint siya agad. Okay? So, pag nagbukas ka ng application, bubuksan niyo yung application para magamit yung application. The process of executing instruction given by you is called computer operation. Okay? Malinaw yan. So there are various, no? 5 ang ginagawa po natin dito. Okay? Number 1, input. Number 2 is process. Number 3 is output. Number 4 is storing. And number 5 is control. Okay? So bababa tayo. Siyempre, input muna. No? Ito yung pinakakailangan. So input is a process by which user enters a type of data into computer system. Magpapasok tayo, okay, ng data or information sa isang computer. It's the basic operation of the computer system. So we have input devices to provide information to the keyboard. Okay, for example, diba, we have the keyboard. If we type anything in the keyboard, will be flash on the monitor. Okay? So for example, covers the letter A, B, C. Diba? Sa likod niyan, syempre, it's nagsisend yan ng process sa CPU. Definitely, may mga binary numbers, si A, B, C, etc. The CPU then parses this code and produce an appropriate output based what is input. So hindi lang natin nakikita ng mata natin, 'di ba? Pag nag-type tayo ng ABC, bago yan lumabas sa screen, pina-process po yan sa CPU, sa Central Processing Unit. Okay? Para ma-recognize kung ano ba yung in-input ng user. Pag nalam niya na, so yung binary nun, okay, mag-generate yun, and then lalabas sa screen po natin yung ABC. Okay? O, dito ha, if for example, you type ABC, ABC will parse as ABC by the system processor, which is CPU. And mag-generate ng letter, and na pinrest natin, definitely lalabas, i-recognize siya, ito B, ito C. Okay? O kaya question mark to. Definitely lalabas po yan sa screen. Okay? So kung nasa MS Word yan, o nagso-search ka, kung ano, nagta-type ka ng comments sa FB or social media. Okay? Computers are not only used to run programs but also to store data. Okay? But these are several types of storage devices that you can store data, hard drive, DVD, USB flash disk, and etc. And computers have several ways to input data, these storage devices, through a USB port using a keyboard. Okay? So if you put data to another source, so camera, yan, you go through an interface card before reaching the CPU. Okay? So ganito yun. Diba? Sa Zoom. May webcam ako, ito yung input kasi para ma-capture yung itsura ko. Okay? So definitely, bago lumabas yan sa mga screen ninyo, no, nagpunta yan kay CPU. So sa component niyan, sa graphics interfaces niya, for example, sa graphics card, syempre magge-generate mo na yan ng ano, yung quality niyan, okay, yung processing ng bitrate ng video na to, yung resolution na to. Okay? Kung wala kang graphics card, yung mga, kasi yung may mga CPU tayo na integrated with graphics. Okay? So yun, i-check nyo yun, i-generate nyo. Pag na-recognize yun, lalabas sa screen ninyo. Okay? O, sabi dito, so you cannot enter any type of data without an input device. So wala kasi i-execute ang laptop, ang computer, ang PC kapag wala tayong input. Okay? So usually, technically, keyboard, mouse, joystick, light pen, trackball. No? Hindi, very rare na to trackball. Scanner. Scanner, di ba? Kung meron kay printer na may scanner. So sinascan yung document. Graphic tablet, ano ba to? Yung mga ginagamit ng mga nagda-drafting. Okay? So gumagamit silang tablet for ano nila, pag sketch po nila. Microphone, di ba? So gumagamit po tayo ng microphone para ma-capture yung voice ng user. Okay? So magnetic id card reader, optical character reader yan, OCR, MRCR, barcode reader. Isa po yan sa mga, di ba, pag nasa grocery tayo sa POS, point of sale system, pag mag-check out na. So gumagamit ng barcode para i-scan yung barcode. Okay? Para makuha, no? Siyempre sa inventory system po nila yon. Okay? So that's an example of input devices, no? Number 2 is to process. Okay? So process is the second basic operations of computer system. The processing means the computer system starts to execute the instruction given by the user. Okay? Sabi ko nga yung input natin, nag-type tayo ng ABC. Si processing, ito na yung part kay CPU. Okay? Yung ABC, kailangan niya ma-recognize bago niya ma-output. Okay? So the processor is one example of the processing. Okay? The CPU. This is the heart of the computer. The component of the computer does most of the work, excuse me, in terms of processing. Responsible siya for running programs and carry out instruction. Yung tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, ulitin ko, nag-type tayo sa keyboard, nagsasalita ko sa microphone, kina-capture ng video camera, ng webcam. So gagawin niya, ipaprocess sa CPU. Okay? So kasi sa dito read information for the hard disk, send message to components like monitor, mouse, or keyboard. Although this data through the PC happens because electricity is running through each component, specific speed or frequency. Okay? Doon na yon, kay CPU na yon, sa speed. Okay? Kasi meron tayong batawag dito? Course, di ba? So hanapin ko lang yung natin, task manager para mas maintindihan. Okay? Para mag-process ang isang CPU. Okay. So, dito yun. Okay? So, CPU. So, malalaman natin yung speed natin. So, ilan ba yung cores natin? Okay? So, sa logical processor natin. Okay? So, dyan yun. So, next natin, yan, for example, yan, may tawag tayong clock speed. So, mas mataas ang clock speed, okay? So, mas mabilis din yung process ng CPU sa PC natin. For example, kung meron tayong isang 1 gigahertz, which is 1 billion cycles per second. So while others, 800 millihertz. So 800 millicycles per second. So usually processor natin, 1.5, 3.5, saka 5 gigahertz. Okay? So yung niyan. Siyempre, pag mas mataas ang natin, nagko-consume po yan ng kuryente. Okay? So next, output. Okay? So output, ito naman yung execution. Nilalabas naman niya yung result, yung ginawa po natin. So, the result of instruction given by a user. Whatever given, input is given, the output result that is outputting. Okay, input-output devices are responsible for the computer's interaction to the physical world. Okay, ito na yung makikita na po natin through monitor. Okay? Makita na po natin sa pag-print po natin. Makikita po sa mga screen po natin. That's the output. Okay? They are responsible for responding your commands and providing feedback. The computer needs these components to provide output, which is information comes out to the system. Okay? So this includes video or text, audio, yung sinaplay natin ng mga sound. Okay? So lahat po yan. So each W is made of physical components. So how define your PC operates? Okay? So dito, keyboard, mouse, microphone, speaker, yung mga input doon. Okay? Then output. 'Di ba sa keyboard, output noon natatype nakikita sa screen. Whether sa comment section, sa chat po natin, sa MS Word, okay? O yung mga gagawa ng image sa PowerPoint, lahat po yun. Mouse, 'di ba? Every time we move, yun yung cursor niya, saan makikita sa monitor kung saan siya padadaanin. Okay? Speakers, 'di ba yung audio po nun? 'Di ba microphone, for example, ito. Nagsasalita ako, naririnig nyo. That's output, 'di ba? Speaker. Okay? So printer, pag nagprint ako, lahat nung nakikita ko sa monitor na ginawa ko, executed, output. So these hardware pieces that allows you use in some way. Okay. So, dito na tayo. Yan. Syempre, without output, syempre, hindi makakapag-execute kung walang output. Technically, monitor, printer, headphones. Okay? Headphone speakers, yung mga sounds. Speakers. Projector, same as with the monitors and TVs. Diba? Nagdi-display ng screen. GPS, yung location po natin. So, pinapakita, nasaan ka. For example, nandito ka sa Mandaluyong. Nandito ka sa Makati. Okay? O yung mga sound card and video card po natin, is mga peripherals po yan sa computer. Okay? Braille reader. Ano yung braille reader? Ito po yung sa mga visually challenged. Okay? Yung mga may problema sa mata, sa sight. Yung speech generating device, meron din po yan. Okay? So, storing. Okay, number 4. Isa-store mo naman niya yun. Isi-save mo naman. Diba? Storing is to output result comes to execution given by the users to storing the output result. Kung ano yung lumabas sa output result, ay technically, ano ba ginagawa po natin? Sinisave po natin yun. Okay? So, the CPU is responsible for storing data in the computer's memory where the data is stored when you type in the Word document or open an image. Kasi 'di ba meron tayong temporary storage and permanent storage, which is the RAM, this is the temporary, syempre yung mga programs, mga cache, and the ROM, ito yung mga sinisave talaga natin permanently. Okay. So CPU process this data to make it easier to retrieve. Processors are the components that are responsible to execute application that's stored in your computer's memory. So lahat ng mga nakastore sa computer, of course, may processing pa rin naman. Kasi gagawin niya, siyempre, instruction mo, yung mga na-save o yung mga na-install, i-open mo. So technically, i-recognize si CPU na kailangan mabuksan itong application or mabuksan itong file na to. Okay? Of course, you're also saving a file. You're copying to the random access memory on your storage like external hard disk, CD, DVD, or flash disk. Okay? So, doon naman tayo naglalagay. Pwede din tayo mag-backup. When you say backup, meron kang kopya dito, meron kang kopya sa kabila. Okay? Just in case na mag-corrupt or napasukan ng virus, technically, meron ka pa rin backup. No? What are those? Hard disk drives, floppy disk. So, obsolete na po yung floppy disk. Yung mga tapes, konti na lang din yan. CDs, sooner, mawawala na rin CDs, pero still, ginagamit pa rin CDs, DVDs. USB flash disk, yan. Importante sa isang estudyante na merong flash disk. Pero kung ikaw ay matakaw sa storage, hard disk ang kailangan mo. Okay, external. Okay? So RAM and ROM, that's an example of the storing devices. And lastly is controlling. Controlling means the combination of all computer operations. Controlling is a type of process that monitors the instruction given by the user from time it is executed to the output result. That is what we call controlling. Sino ba may trabaho nito? Of course, the arithmetic logic unit. Okay? Nasa CPU kasi yan. Okay? So, example of controlling, ito, mouse. So, computer mouse translate your hand movements into the instructions of the computer. Technically, pag gumalaw ang mouse, so execute ng CPU, ito yung nagtatranslate so kung saan ko gustong ilagay yung movements ng cursor. The buttons can be found on the other side of the computer mouse, often features 3 buttons. Okay? That allow you to scroll out, down the page without clicking. Okay? So we also have touch screens, joysticks, trackballs, and keyboards. Okay? So the world is computer large and complex, but some knowledge we saw how the mouse works, you can better understand how they work. So yun, yung about sa controlling. Okay? Na yung mouse natin, even of course the tablet, kung saan yung nakalagay yung cursor din dahil sa tablet kasi hawak po natin yung stylus o yung pen. Okay, pag malapit sa doon sa tablet niya, technically nire-read niya kung saan ang position. Ganon din naman sa touchscreen. Okay, kung saan nakapwesto kamay mo that will be instructed, yun ang gagawin niya lalo na pag nagsuscroll. Okay? And of course, sa controlling, trabaho po yan ni arithmetic logical unit. Okay? Sa CPU po yan para magkaroon ng direct flow na maayos na execution sa computer ninyo. Okay? So, yan po ayan po ang ating tinatawag na basic operations of a computer. So now, konting recap lang tayo ulit dito sa ating basic computer operations mula dito sa isang video.
Hi again, students, and a big hello to everyone watching around the Philippines. I am Teacher Mike, your technology and livelihood education teacher. In today's episode, we will identify and familiarize ourselves with the 4 basic computer operations. So bring out your pen and paper and join me as we build your knowledge towards a better future, one skill at a time. Welcome to TLE9.
Let us study TLE. Let us study, come with me. All of the knowledge and all of
the work. You might respond with something like this, by simply turning on your computer and waiting for it to load. Then start working on it, and when you are done, press on the shutdown button and that's it. Just like now when you are watching us on your screen and listening to us on the radio. Do you have any idea what is going on inside the computer machine? Today, we will be discussing the 4 basic operations of a computer system. We have the input unit, processing, storage, and output unit. Let's start with the input. As smart as computers are, they still need input from humans to provide data to process and to tell them what to do. Computers today accept input from a variety of devices. The 2 you're probably most familiar with include the keyboard and the mouse. Almost all modern computers have these devices. Other common input devices I'm sure you are familiar with are scanners, microphones, and webcams. Students, I have another question. Do you still remember which part is considered as the brain of the computer? Correct! That is the CPU, or the Central Processing Unit. Processing is done inside a computer in an area called the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. Processing is the conversion of input to output. The Central Processing Unit, or CPU, is the principal part of any digital computer system, generally composed of the main memory, control unit, and arithmetic logic unit. In modern computers, the CPU is contained in an integrated circuit chip called the microprocessor. Being the brain of the computer, the CPU is where processes such as calculating, sorting, and searching take place. Whatever is done in our computers, such as checking emails, playing games, and doing homework, it is the CPU that processes the data we use. Under the Central Processing Unit, we have 2 essential units here, and these are the Control Unit, or the CU, and the Arithmetic Logical Unit, or the ALU. The Control Unit controls the flow of data within the system. The Control Unit is the processor component that directs and coordinates most of the computer's operations. The Control Unit has a role much like a traffic police. It determines which instruction is executed next, and it interprets each instruction issued by a program and initiate the appropriate action to carry out the instruction. The Arithmetic and Logic Unit, or ALU, is where the CPU performs the arithmetic and logic operations. Every task that your computer carries out is completed here. Even typing into a word processor involves adding binary digits to the file and then calculating which pixels on the screen should change so that you can see the characters. Comparison operations involve comparing one data item with another to determine whether the first item is more significant than, equal to, or less than the other object. For example, the arithmetic part deals with a calculation like 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, and the logic part, which deals with any logical comparison like 2 is greater than 1. Do you sometimes complain that your computer is slow? Maybe it has something to do with your Central Processing Unit. There are 3 main factors that affect how the CPU carries out instructions. First is the clock speed that is measured by hertz. It is measured in cycles per second, and 1 cycle per second is known as 1 hertz. This means that a CPU with a clock speed of 2 gigahertz can carry out 2,000 million or 2 billion cycles per second. For example, the latest Intel Core i5 processors that we use today come in multiple speeds ranging from 1.9 gigahertz up to 4 gigahertz. That is considered really fast. Just remember, the higher the clock speed the CPU has, the faster it can process instructions. Next, we have the cores. A CPU is traditionally made up of processors with single core. A CPU with two cores called a dual-core processor is like having two processors in one. A dual-core processor can fetch and execute two instructions simultaneously. It takes a single-core processor to fetch and execute just one instruction. A quad-core processor has four cores and can carry out even more instructions in the same period. Lastly, we have the cache. This is a tiny block of memory built right into the processor. This is used to store often used data or instructions. The bigger the cache is, the more quickly commonly used instructions and data can be brought into the processor and used. Just remember, they don't come cheap. The higher the processor, the more expensive it is. But by knowing some of the necessary specifications, this could help you choose which computer to buy and why other computers are cheaper or more expensive than the others. I'm sure you remember this from our previous episodes. The memory unit consists of the RAM, or random access memory, sometimes referred to as the primary or main memory. Unlike a hard drive or secondary memory, this memory is fast and directly accessible by the CPU. As mentioned, RAM is short for random access memory. While it might sound mysterious, RAM is one of the most fundamental computing elements. RAM is the super fast and temporary data storage space that a computer needs to access right now or in the next few moments. RAM temporarily stores data and goes away when the power is turned off. It is very fast, which makes it ideal for things that a computer is actively working on, such as applications currently running, for example, the web browsers in which you are reading a blog or an article, and the data those applications work with. Because of its volatility, RAM can store permanent data. RAM can be compared to a person's short-term memory and a hard disk drive to a person's long-term memory. Short-term memory is focused on the immediate work but can only keep a limited number of facts in a view at any one time. An example of a short-term memory is like remembering what you had for breakfast yesterday. When a person's short-term memory fills up, it can be refreshed with facts stored in the brain's long-term memory, like your first airplane ride. I even remember what my teacher told us in class when I was in grade 7. The first thing you must do in the morning when you wake up is to look at yourself in front of the mirror, greet yourself good morning, and smile. It is so uplifting that until now I'm doing it to brighten up my mood, and it's such a great way to start my busy day. And lastly, we have the output unit. This is the process of producing useful information or results for the user, such as a printed report or a visual display. It is the display or output of results after it's been processed. The output is the exact opposite of the input. The output is the function that allows a computer to display information from the system for the user. This can be accomplished through the monitor, printer, and speakers. Let us put these operations into a practical form. For example, if you want to write an essay on a computer, you first click on the Microsoft Word program using the mouse and type your essay in the Word program using a keyboard. Then while typing, you can modify the font style and size, change the color, add pictures, and much more. And when it's finished, you then print it using a printer and save it on your hard disk drive for future use. Here, the mouse and keyboard are examples of the inputs which you use to enter data into the computer. The CPU is the processing unit that applies the changes you make to the document, and the printer is the output unit through which you obtain the result of the data you made earlier to the computer. And the storage is where you save it on your hard disk drive for future use. Students, let us now have a short review based on our topic. Well, let's begin. Number 1. Under the processing unit, the clock speed is measured by what? The correct answer is letter B, hertz.
Yan. So, dyan na natin isa-stop yung ating performing computer operations. Okay? So, malaman lang natin yung components natin dito. So, do you have some questions regarding our topic?